Well, hello! Happy Pride Month from your local cishet guy. Is what I would say, but by the time this video comes out, it should already be July. Let it be known that I didn't do this on purpose to be unsportive. I just ran into some obstacles despite really wanting to get this out on time. Particularly the fact that I was still attending my college semester for the first few weeks of June, and then getting hospitalized not long after said semester had ended. So yeah, sorry about that. Love wins, but the flu wins harder. Anyway, welcome to the next entry in the Touhou ship ranking videos. As you can see from the title, the character of choice for today is Flandre Scarlet. But why is that? Well, as I just mentioned earlier, I was supposed to get this out on Pride Month, and the Pride flag is a rainbow, sort of. The color indigo is removed from it. Sorry, Ron. And Flandre's wings are kind of a rainbow. Some of you are probably thinking, well, Spectre, if that's your logic, then why didn't you pick Shimada instead, you jackass, asshole, larper? Feel annoyed with that word yet? Well, to answer the question that I just made up, the reason is simple. Hello, it's Flandre Scarlet. Do you think your grandpa knows who Shimada is? No. So yes, I just wanted to pick another popular character after Reimu, but fear not, my next planned entry is to cover the whole Touhou 20 cast as a celebration of the game's 1-year anniversary later in August. And since they're quite literally the most recent cast, they are very much on the opposite spectrum of popularity when compared to someone like Flandre. Also, this is just a nice little coincidence, but as some of you may know, a Zune-approved remaster of Touhou 6 was announced in Nintendo Direct, only in the Japanese one, but it was still there. So I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone by making this video. Before we do a quick review on the rules, I'd like to give you a summary on Reimu's episode. Here is the following ranking for that. Do note that a lot of things have changed when it comes to Love Train, Pixif's database for Touhou ships, and tags for artworks in general since I made that video. For example, whilst I was collecting the data for this video, I noticed that pairing Reimu with Okina or Sekibanki in Love Train results in a loss, whereas it didn't do so before. There are also some minor additions, like Mima getting a few new, or rather old, artworks that only recently gained the ship tag for her and Reimu. Well, I don't want to keep you waiting for too long, so here are the rules. If you want a more in-depth coverage, well, you can visit the video on the upper right hand corner. That being said, the rules are as follows. My data comes only from Pixif, no other websites. R18 works aren't counted in the total amount. Men aren't counted due to being more complicated to gather data from, since straight couples lack a tag equivalent to Yuri or Yaoi. Characters from media outside of Touhou are also not counted, which includes Seiho Project. Both characters have to be present in the drawing, or if it only shows one character, the title or caption must make it explicit that it's an interaction between two characters, such as the drawing being seen through the POV of the other character. AI-generated artworks aren't counted, obviously. The whole reason I'm making these rankings is because they're based around love. What do machines know about love? You ever seen Am? I don't think he loves very much. My own works also don't count since I can theoretically keep drawing my favorite ships and increase the numbers. Finally, the first time I gathered my numbers was on the 15th of June, but right before I started editing this video on the 6th of July, I redid some of the numbers, which didn't affect much of the ranking besides one character being placed above where they were initially. So if you check some ships by the time you watch this video, I'm sure some have different amounts at this point. Alright, enough introductions, let's get on to the rankings. Sitting at the bottom with a total of only one single artwork at 34th place, we have Raisin from the manga, Yashie Kicho, Sekibanki, Wakasagi Hime, Momiji Inubashiri, Minoriko Aki, Chan, Letty Whiterock, and Kutaka Niwatari. Alright, right off the bat, there's a handful of characters, but you wanna know the best part? As you can see right here on the screen, none of these guys have a ship tag except Kutaka, but we'll get to her later. Yeah, something I found out whilst collecting the data for Flandre ships, there's a surprising number of ships that exist, but lack any tags whatsoever. You'd think if someone wanted to make a crack ship, they'd also make up a ship name, but I guess not. Anyway, one thing I wanted to improve upon from the Reimu video is that I want to actually show a drawing of the ship so you know they actually exist. That being said, a few of these characters reside in only a single post, where the tags for Reimu, Marisa, and Sakuya are in there. But the post itself shows a lot more characters with Flandre, and the caption makes it clear that all of these drawings are intended to be Yuri artworks. I'll go through these first and then show the other ones, so here's Sekibanki, Momiji, and Minoriko. As for Raisin and Yashie, they were made by the same artist, who has also drawn a bunch of other Flandre ships, but it seems like they also wanted to make their own. So here are the drawings for those two. Next up is Letty, Then here's Chen, and you can see that there's another character kissing Flandre in the face here, but we'll get there when we get there. Finally, here's Kutaka, which doesn't really look like a ship drawing, but the title combines their names. And I used the same logic to count Jun for Reimu's ships, so as far as I'm concerned, Kutaka is part of the ranking, albeit at the very bottom. Overall, I don't really have any comments for these characters other than what I've already said about how most of them have no tags, which I do find kind of amusing. I was under the impression that any ships, including crack ships, have a tag, but this ranking proved me wrong. Anyway, we've spent more than enough time at the final place, so let's move on. At 33rd place with 2 works, we have Mugetsu and Seija Kijin. Seija doesn't really have anything interesting other than the fact that she's the only Touhou 14 character to count for Love Train. Mugetsu, being a PC98 character, just straight up doesn't exist in Love Train. Speaking of Mugetsu, I do find it a bit interesting how, and sorry to bear this news, her sister Gengetsu doesn't have any ships with Flandre. I feel like between the two, Gengetsu is a bit more similar to Flandre, at least design-wise. I've seen some drawings of them together, but they either don't include the Yuri tag or doesn't have a ship tag like with Kutaka earlier. So I decided to make a judgment call and left Gengetsu out of the ranking. Back to Mugetsu, between her and Gengetsu, Mugetsu is the younger one, and Flandre is also the younger sister between her and Remelia, so I assume that's the reason for this ship existing. Before we move on, here are the examples for Seija and Mugetsu. At 32nd place with 3 works, we already have our first individual character with Kagero Imaizumi. Kagero is part of the pose with Sekibanki, Momiji, and Minoriko that I showed earlier. Going forward, I'll just refer to this pose as the compilation. As for the remaining 2 works, it's actually made by the same person that drew Flandre with Raisin and Yashige. Something tells me this person really likes Flandre. At 31st place with 5 works, yeah, we've already skipped a number, we have Kurumi, Kongara, Suika Ibuki, Reisen Udongin Inaba, and Byakuren Hichiri. Byakuren is part of the compilation, though here's a different example just to be fair. Other than that, I got nothing besides feeling kind of bad since we're 2 episodes in and both times she's ranked pretty low. As for the others, I don't really have any comments for Suika and Reisen, so I'll just show the example drawings now. For Kongara, there's pretty much only one artist that's ever drawn this ship, and surprisingly, it's not the previously mentioned artist, though they have drawn Kongara with Reimu before. As for Kurumi, this is where it gets a bit complicated. Here's an example drawing, and now here's an example render. So now, this person has made multiple renders of Flandre and Kurumi together, but only to contain the ship tag. After mulling over it, I've decided that this render is the only one I add towards the total, as the other ones either has Remelia in it, which means it's not focused solely on Flandre and Kurumi, or Flandre is just straight up absent. I know I've stated earlier that title, caption, or even text that makes it explicit that it's an interaction between 2 characters will still count towards the total, but since it's already difficult enough to judge which works will count for this one, I've decided to keep it simple and just have it be the renders that focus on Flandre and Kurumi, and only them. Well, that was annoyingly long for what was essentially just a clarification, so let's move on. At 30th place with 8 works, we have Keina Kamishirasawa and Yuyuko Saigyoji. Alright, let's address the Hakutaku in the room. As I've shown earlier with Chen, Keina is also in this drawing. I actually thought she was Rumia at first because her stupid little hat looked like a bow with the angle it was drawn at, but Keina's tag is in the pose, so that clarifies it. But that's not all. The second tag for Keina that you see here originates from a novel. So what's this novel about anyway? Oh good lord. Anyway, the reason for Keina being here is probably because of Remelia's statement in Touhou 8 where she said that Keina would make for a good tutor to Flandre. As for the other character here, Yuyuko is death. Flandre is destruction. Combine the two and you have death and destruction. Besides that, about the only thing I can mention is how the long ass tag that you see here originates from one of the novels and not a drawing. Speaking of drawings, here's one for Keina and Yuyuko. Okay, next. At 29th place with 9 works, we have Hina Kagiyama. I didn't have a good opportunity to mention this until now, but Hina, along with a few others like Suika and Kagero, are characters that aren't counted towards Love Train, meaning they aren't listed in Pixip's database of Touhou ships, so I had to actively hunt these down in order to put them into the rankings, and that's it. Here's the drawing, let's move on. At 28th place with 10 works, we have Sanae Kochiya and Yukari Yakumo. I'll tell you this right now, this is the last tie in the ranking. Yeah, we're not even halfway there, and from this point onward, we only have individual characters. Okay, here's a drawing for Sanae, and here's one for Yukari. Next. At 27th place with 11 works, we have Flandre Scarlet. We've already reached. Alright, well, the thing with this ship in particular is that this is one of the few times where it makes sense in the canon. You may recall that one of Flandre's spell cards is 4 of a kind, where she summons 3 clones of herself, and apparently these clones act independently from her. So they are technically different people despite still being Flandre, an argument you can really use for, say, PC98 Reimu and Windows Reimu. Since that is the same character, it's just the designs that are different. Anyway, here's a drawing. Can't say I like looking at it, but showing an example is something I'm doing now, so fair is fair. At 26th place with 13 works, we have Kaguya Horai-san. I know someone who loves Flandre but really hates Kaguya. I wanna know how they feel about this ship. I assume the reason for this ship existing, besides it being 2 characters from the early Windows era games, is because I guess Flandre can freely use Kaguya as a punching bag for her destroying powers, and Kaguya can just walk it off afterwards. And I suppose the Horai branch having multicolored jewels makes it similar to Flandre's wings. That's just my guess though. Here's a drawing. Next. At 25th place with 15 works, we have Clown Piece. Hey, look at that! 15 works for a character from Touhou 15. This is actually a good time to mention how some ships you'll see from this point seem to exist merely because the characters have certain aspects in their designs that look similar to Flandre's. With Clownpiece here, she wields a torch which has fire in it, which is kinda similar to Flandre's Leviathan. Clownpiece is also a fairy, which Flandre is not, but she is short and has wings, so that's close enough. Anyway, here's a drawing. Next. At 24th place with 21 works, we have Daiose. Honestly, I think this ship just exists because people saw that Cherno is commonly shipped with either Daiose or Flandre, and some people decided to say fuck that and ship Daiose with Flandre instead. And to those people I say, you have my utmost respect, because that's pretty much how I find most of my favorite ships. Besides that, there's not much to talk about, although Daiose is our first Touhou 6 character in this ranking. Here's a drawing. Let's move on. At 23rd place with 25 works, we have Satori Komeiji. Hey, speaking of people saying fuck that to common ships, here we have one that definitely exists because Koichi is seen a lot with Flandre and Satori with Remelia. Speaking of the Komeiji sisters, spoiler alert, they are the only characters from Touhou 11 that you'll see in this ranking. You'd think Utsuho, being a giant flaming son of destruction with wings, would make her a viable partner for Flandre, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Anyway, here's a drawing. Next, at 22nd place with 26 works, we have Sunny Milk. Okay, here we go. I can finally give you some insight instead of saying something bare bones and then moving on. Okay, first of all, fairy, fire related, because her name is literally Sunny, and that's it. But now the important part. In the first CD for the Strange and Bright Nature Deity manga, which has Sunny in the cover of it, the first song in this album, called Sunny Milk's Scarlet Mist Incident, is a remix of Flandre's theme, You When No One Was Hurt, and also a song from the Eastern and Little Nature Deity CD, but who cares about that. So there you go, consider yourself educated. And guess what, I'm not done commenting. There's an artist that likes to draw this shit, but they also like to draw the ship for Yamame and Parsi. And then one of their drawings is this, which initially confused me and almost didn't count for the final total, but upon closer inspection, this actually is Flandre and Sunny. They're just cosplaying as Yamame and Parsi. And hell, let's just have this be the example drawing. Let's move on. At 21st place with 28 works, we have Tsuako Moria, short and blonde, just like Flandre, though she also gets bonus points for being a fellow extra stage boss. Here's a drawing. Okay, let's get on with it. At 20th place with 32 works, we have Medicine Melancholy. Anybody bet on short and blonde? So, one thing I'd like to mention about Medicine is that there's an artist that frequently draws her and Flandre together, and it seems to be a manga series of sorts, but some of them only include the ship tag in the caption, so it was a bit difficult to judge which works count towards the total. I decided to do something similar with Kurumi, though I'm a lot more generous with this one since I choose to just include all the works that has Flandre and Medicine in it. Besides this artist, here's a drawing made by someone else. Oh, and just as a reminder, I do credit everything in the description. It is in a pastebin link, but it has labels and timestamps, so you'll know exactly which drawing I'm talking about. I've already made this joke before, but I hope that's enough to get H-Bomber Guy off my back. At 19th place with 36 works, we have Kogasa Tatara. At first, I was going to comment how this ship probably exists because both Flandre and Kogasa are present in Touhou 17.5, but after a quick review of my search results for this ship, There's actually only been one single artwork of this ship that was made after the release of Touhou 17.5. I'm not gonna show it here though, because both Flandre and Kogasa are given ridiculously big boobs. Go look for it yourself, I put the tags in the video and in the spreadsheet for a reason. Oh yeah, I'd also like to remind you that I put these rankings in the spreadsheet, but don't look at it now, you'll just be spoiling the fun of my engaging commentary. Anyway, can you tell I have no actual comment on the ship? It's a good thing some other people do have actual comments though, as Discord user Trash-chan has given me info that there's a doujin titled "Do Your Best Kogasa-chan" which made the ship popular. This person also helped in the Reimu video for finding the panel for Kaguya appearing really fucking tiny when compared to Raisin. As a bonus, I also personally think this is another "fuck that" ship. This time it's for Nue. Anyway, drawing. Let's move on. At 18th place with 40 works we have Nue Hoju. Now, hey, speak of the devil, I actually didn't intend for that to happen while I was writing the script. So the thing about Nue is that she, along with Flandre and Koichi, form a sort of trio of extra stage bosses. A quick search led me to an arrangement of all three of their themes titled 3 Comic Verse. I vaguely remembered this because there was a video that removed every other beat of the song. And hey, this trio even have their own Pixiv tag. That's all I know about why this ship exists, so here's a drawing. Next, at 17th place with 60 works we have Koakuma. Look at that, we're halfway done already. I think the current YouTube meta suggests that I ask you to like and subscribe at this point, so go do that right now. We good? Okay. I know a different person who loves Flandre, but also loves Koakuma, so now I wonder how they feel about this ship. Koakuma is our second Touhou 6 character in this ranking, and predictably, she, along with Dayose that appeared earlier, have the lowest amount of works compared to the other Touhou 6 characters, since they are the unnamed mid-bosses. Although, while we're on that topic, considering the Touhou 6 remaster is on the horizon, do you think Dayose and Koakuma will finally be officially called as such? I mean, those names have been used in official media before, particularly their fortune slips in Whispered Oracle of Hakone Shrine, though I'm not entirely sure if these actually count. Nevertheless, I think it'd be very interesting to see these two have a Zune-approved name. If they end up having a name different from Dayose and Koakuma, do you think people will cheer or riot? I'm betting all zero of my money on the latter. I have one more thing to say before we move on, which is to say that pairing Koakuma with Remilia instead is weirdly very rare. You'd think it's about the same amount as Flandre, but I guess Remilia's just not as charismatic as she thinks. I have actually drawn those two before, albeit just their disembodied heads. And I also forgot the bow in Remilia's cap because I did this fully from memory. And hey, while we're talking about forgetting something in a drawing I made, you see Yuma in the thumbnail here? Yeah, I forgot to give her the rings that she has on her ears. Anyway, before you forget what this video is even about after my tangent earlier, here's Koakuma and Flandre. Next, at 16th place with 63 works we have Aya Shameimaru. In Bohemian Archive of Japanese Red, Aya interacts with Flandre a few times, mainly to interview her about a meteorite that Flandre had exploded, and I think that's the extent of why this ship exists. I mean, both of these are pretty popular characters in general. Hell, supposedly there was a time when people fucking hated Aya when she returned in Touhou 10 because of how much she had appeared at that time. I wasn't there to witness this happening, and even if I was, I'm sure this mostly happened in the Japanese community, for which I am not. Cool bug fact. Both Aya and Flandre appear as enemies in Mailing's chapter of Touhou Life, and while I was tinkering with the project file for the game, I actually used them as the template for enemy sizes, since Aya occupies 1 tile horizontally, 2 tiles vertically, whereas Flandre occupies 2 tiles both horizontally and vertically, which are precisely the sizes that I needed. Speaking of a Touhou fangame that I discovered through Mr. Streamer here, in embodiment of Scarlet Devil for Busy Person and its extra stage, Aya and Flandre actually had the same voice actress. Flandre would get a different one by the time Perfect Cherry Blossom for Busy Person rolled around though. Anyway, here's a drawing. Let's go. At 15th place with 65 works, we have Yuka Kazami. So the interesting thing about the ship is that Yuka doesn't count for Love Train. If you put her together with Flandre, you'll lose. Which is funny because among all the Touhou 9 characters, the other being Medicine and Aya, Yuka ended up being the one to have the most amount of works. This is also my way of telling you that this marks the end of the Touhou 9 cast for this ranking. As for why this ship exists, it probably has something to do with how Yuka is plant related and Flandre is fire related, so opposites attract and the like. But I think the more likely reason is that both of them are victims of fandom perception, with Flandre frequently being seen as a crazy girl and Yuka being seen as a sadist. That's all I got. Here's a drawing. Next. At 14th place with 96 works, we have Patchouli Knowledge. Quite a jump in numbers, but that's to be expected since we've reached yet another Touhou 6 character. Patchouli appears as the mid-boss of Touhou 6's extra stage, which is where you fight Flandre as the boss. So I assume that's the main reason for this ship existing other than the obvious fact that they both live in the Scarlet Devil Mansion. Patchouli and Flandre are also the only Touhou 6 character to appear in the extra stage of embodiment of Scarlet Devil for Busy Person. That has no bearing for this ship's existence, I just want to mention that. Here's the drawing. Let's move on. At 13th place with 106 works, we have Fujiwara no Moko. They are both extra stage bosses and they are both fire related, but there's actually a bit more to it. The characters in Moko's name have the literal meaning of Scarlet younger sister. This is even referenced in the fourth type that you see here. The first character is referring to a deep red color, like crimson or scarlet. The other characters are Imoto, which is what Flandre is referred to by Patchouli in Touhou 6's extra stage. Specifically, Imoto-sama, similar to how Remelia is referred to as Ojo-sama. I think that's about all I can say for the ship, though just like with Kaguya, Flandre can probably endlessly destroy Moko and she'd just get back up afterwards. Though again, that's just my assumption. Moko's also part of the compilation, but here's a different drawing. Next, at 12th place with 127 works, we have Yomu Konpaku. I don't really know why this ship exists other than the fact that Yomu is a highly popular character. She's won the popularity poll before, much like Flandre. I guess since Flandre's Leviathan is kind of like a sword, she can do sword fights with Yomu. That's all I got. Yomu's also part of the compilation, but here's a different drawing. On to the next one. At 11th place with 136 works, we have Alice Margotroid. She's blonde and she's popular. I guess because Flandre is sometimes depicted to own toys, Alice can also make some dolls for her. There are also a few works that show her with PC-98 Alice instead, probably because she's shorter. You know, now's a good time to mention that if you ever wanna help in future entries of this series, feel free to DM my Discord alt account. I'll put it on the screen right now. As a reminder, the next entry will be all of the Touhou 20 cast, so if you're particularly an expert in that, then you've come to the right place. But yeah, I got nothing. Here's a drawing. Let's move on. At 10th place with 183 works, we have Yuma Totetsu. I mentioned Touhou 17.5 earlier, which Yuma is the main antagonist of. From what I know, since I haven't played the game, it would seem that Yuma can't be defeated until you get around to playing as Flandre. It's because of this rather personal exchange that Yuma ended up being shipped with Flandre, until Touhou 19 came out and gave her and Ron a bit more backstory. Oh yeah, speaking of Ron, she's not part of the ranking. In fact, Alice was actually the last of the Touhou 7 cast. So not only is her color removed from the pride flag, she's also absent here. That's really quite unfortunate for her. Wait, the section is about Yuma. But the only other thing I can say about Yuma is that she, along with the next character, were pretty straightforward when it came to crunching the numbers. Pretty much every work in every page that I searched for was a drawing of the ship, with very few exceptions that I had to exclude from the total. So kudos to you, Yuma. You've made my job easier. Yuma is also part of the compilation, but here's a different drawing. On to the next one. At 9th place with 185 works, we have Okina Matara. Still in Touhou 17.5, Okina was the one who helped Flandre with defeating Yuma. Okina is also the final boss if you play as Yuma, so by that logic, the enemy of Flandre's enemy is Flandre's friend. Or girl friend in this case. If you remember from the Reimu video, which you don't, I mentioned how the ship for Reimu and Yukari tends to be rather intense, and I noticed this trend with Okina and Flandre as well. You know, I hate to say it, but Kopak Yomu's depiction of Okina may not be that far off from how most people see her. Here's a not so intense drawing. Let's move on. At 8th place with 263 works, we have Reimu Hakure. Okay, from this point onwards, we're only going to see the most expected faces, which are the two protagonists, the rest of the Touhou 6 cast, and one more person that I'm sure you can guess. Anyway, this is our first instance where a character from a previous episode returns. And there's actually a bit of a discrepancy between these two episodes. In Reimu's video, I listed Flandre having 262 works, but there's one more here. The reasoning is of course quite simple. Time had passed, so people have made more drawings of the ship since I made the Reimu video. Another thing I counted is, you guessed it, the compilation. Besides that, here's a different drawing. Let's move on. At 7th place with 266 works, we have Journal. Short, fairy, Touhou 6, really popular, you know the deal. Though Cherno also gets bonus points for being ice related, which makes her the opposite to Flandre, much like with Yuka earlier. These two are also effectively the online mascot of Touhou as a whole due to their reputation in the early days of the internet, what with the existence of Cherno's perfect math class and Ronald McDonald insanity. Overall, these two appear to be a rather tame pairing, inoffensive but nothing too crazy. Here's a drawing, on to the next one. At 6th place with 361 works, we have Sakuya Izayoi. I would say this is another fuck that ship, but it makes sense that Sakuya would be commonly paired with either one of the Scarlet sisters. After all, she serves both of them. Hey, you know who else Sakuya technically serves? Patchouli. Yet somehow, despite them being highly popular Touhou 6 characters, you barely ever see these two being together. What's up with that? Anyway, you can already tell that I don't have much to say since this is another pretty basic ship, so I would like to instead use this opportunity to mention that I have an interest of making a story-focused RPG Maker game about the aforementioned pairing of Sakuya and Patchouli. It is admittedly a draft of an idea of a concept or however that saying goes, but I just thought I'd let you know. Oh yeah, Sakuya is also part of the compilation, and as I briefly mentioned at the beginning, while talking about the compilation, she's one of 3 characters that's actually listed in the tags. Here's another drawing. Let's move on. At 5th place with 391 works, we have Rumia. Short, blonde, red thing on her head. I think that's the main reason for this ship existing. But I think people also enjoy the fact that Rumia is the first stage boss, whereas Flandre is the extra stage boss, meaning they are in 2 opposing extremes when it comes to their difficulty. I think Rumia's fanon trait of always eating people also plays off well with the fact that Flandre is a vampire, which drinks blood. Other than that, about the only thing I'll mention is that she was probably the most annoying to get the numbers of. She has the highest amount of works that's under the thousands, so I had to skim through so many drawings to see which ones count for the total. I did not enjoy that, especially with how early Rumia appears chronologically. And yes, you heard me correctly before, from this point we're only going to see the number of works be in the thousands. But first, a drawing. Next. At 4th place with 1,170 works, we have Marisa Kirisame. There's the other protagonist, and holy shit, what a disparity compared to Reimu. I assume a big reason for that is because Reimu is more frequently seen with Remelia, and if you remember from the Reimu video, which again you don't, Remelia was ranked pretty damn high, so there is a lot of drawings for those two. It would seem people saw that and chose to give Flandre the other protagonist instead. Of course, I also have to note the dialogue between Marisa and Flandre after you defeat Flandre in Touhou 6, where she mentions she'll introduce Flandre to Reimu so the two can get married. Flandre and Reimu, I mean. But as is noted in the wiki page for the shipping, despite the fact that Marisa wants to wing woman Flandre into getting together with Reimu, most people went, say it with me, fuck that, and decided to put Flandre with Marisa instead. Marisa is also part of the compilation, but her inclusion here doesn't really matter considering we're already in the thousands. But anyway, here's a different drawing. Let's move on to the top 3. At 3rd place with 1,599 works, we have Hong Mei-ling. First of all, I want to give credit to Discord user NotLol for having helped with translating the 3rd tag. That being said, this is another relatively basic ship considering it's 2 SDM characters, but I think there's a bit more than that. Similar to Reimu with Remelia and Marisa with Flandre, I think the ship came to fruition after people saw Sakuya with Remelia, so they took a different SDM servant and put her with Flandre, that being Mei-ling. Much like with how Sakuya is usually depicted as a sort of babysitter to Remelia, Mei-ling is also seen as a playmate to Flandre. Despite all this though, the wiki states that in canon, the relationship between these two are unknown. Though knowing how shippers are like, this is merely an excuse to make it so that the relationship for these two can be whatever the hell they want it to be. That's about all I can say. Again, this is a pretty tame and expected ship for Flandre, so there's nothing too special going on. Here's a drawing. Onto the penultimate character. At 2nd place with 2,132 works, we have Koichi Komeiji. First of all, holy tags! Does she seriously need that many? Like goddamn. Second of all, Discord user NotLol also helped with translating the last tag. Third of all, I actually have to start talking about the ship now. So when it comes to the fandom, the Scarlet sisters and the Komeiji sisters frequently cross paths due to their many similarities. Both are pairs of sisters, that much is obvious. The older one leads the big-ass house they live in, a mansion for Emilia and a palace for Satori, and the younger one has some weird shit going on with them. Flandre is locked up in the basement due to her destructive powers, whereas Koichi got no thoughts due to closing off her third eye. In a way, the Komeiji sisters can be seen as a sort of reboot of the Scarlet sisters. They tend to rank very high in the popularity polls, with Flandre and Koichi occasionally obtaining the first place trophies, the most recent time this happened being last year with Koichi as the winner. Similarly to what I mentioned with Yuka earlier, these two are also victims of fandom perception, and Koichi especially has it bad because there's like a whole ass series where she's all fucked up. So in summation, these two just have so much in common that it's only natural people were going to start shipping them. Second place though, I'm actually kind of surprised with that. I would think either Marisa or Mei-ling would have gotten the silver medal due to them having existed for far longer than Koichi, but I guess the power of similarities are just that strong. Here's a drawing, let's move on. Number 1 is Romilio, and that marks the end of the second episode of the Touhou Ship Rankings. I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly had more fun with this one than I did with the Reimu video, mostly because there were many things that made it easier for me. For one, I didn't need to upload this on a specific date, I just needed it to be out in June, which I still failed to do. But hey, that just meant I had even less of a deadline. For 2, Flandre has almost half as many ships as Reimu, so that pretty much cuts my workload in half. For 3, I need to stop listing things if I don't have 3 things to list. Not like I should list things in 3 because of those insignificant fucking machines. Before I go, I just want to give a few reminders and also a teaser for my next heavily edited video that's not the Touhou 20 ship ranking. First reminder is that you can request any character for future episodes of these rankings. Since whichever character you suggest will be made after the Touhou 20 video, I think it's only fair if I no longer disqualify Marisa, Alice, and Patchouli as potential candidates. Although I heavily discourage you to choose Marisa because she's gonna be really annoying to work with. I'd wager even more so than Reimu. But you can, if you want, just please don't. Second reminder, I'm listing again, what the hell is wrong with me? Anyway, the second reminder is that if you wanna help out with any sort of info for why certain ships exist, feel free to DM me in my Discord alt account, right here. Anyway, I've kept you waiting long enough. Here's a quick teaser for a future project. With all of that being said, I'll see you in the next video. That's right, I'm going to be playing the most obscure Pokemon ROM hack you've never heard of. Ah, fuck. God damn it, I'm too late, god damn it. Oh well, I got a funnier title in mind, and my video is gonna be way longer. In fact, I'm honestly kind of scared to even make it. Okay, bye bye.